Hello viewers, I am Dr. Robiul. I work as a lecturer in pathology in a medical college hospital, and I am making this video for my students and also for you. Hope someone finds this helpful. Today's topic is free radical injury. This video will contain the definition of free radical, examples of free radicals, how they are generated and removed, and how they cause cell injury. Okay, so a lot of topics, so let's begin. First question, what do we mean by free radicals? How can we define them? So as written in your textbook, free radicals can be defined as chemical species that contain single unpaired electron in an outer orbit. Okay, I hope you're still with me. You didn't run away just like my students do when I try to teach them definitions of pathology. I even have to show them teddy bear to keep them calm. So look, I'm also showing you a teddy. So look at the teddy, don't run away because I will explain this definition line by line now. So to explain the definition, you can see that I am showing you a simple diagrammatic image of a free radical. Now on the center of this image you can see the nucleus, and then it has some orbit, and electrons are seen in those different orbits. Now how many orbits will we have in a free radical? That will vary depending on the structure of the free radical. Now look at the outer orbit. What can we see here? In this particular free radical we can see that it has two pairs of electron on the outer orbit and also a single or unpaired electron on its outer orbit. So this molecule is therefore by definition a free radical. So the point I'm trying to make here is we will call a chemical species free radical when it will have unpaired electron on its outer orbit, and that doesn't mean that all the electrons in its outer orbit will be unpaired. For example, in this image you can see on the outer orbit we have two pairs of electron, but we are defining this thing as a free radical because as you can see there is also a single unpaired electron on the outer orbit, and for that single unpaired electron, for that unpaired electron's presence in the outer orbit, we will define this molecule as free radical. Now always remember, the presence of unpaired electron makes these molecules very unstable and highly reactive, and these free radicals can therefore attack molecules adjacent to them, and they can also modify those adjacent molecules. Sometimes there is also a term you'll see in your textbook, that is autocatalytic reaction, and in those cases the molecules that are reacting with the free radicals, those molecules themselves also become free radicals, and that causes further damage by propagation of cell injury. So that is known as autocatalytic reaction, and we can also see that during free radical injuries. And one important thing you have to remember, that the most common examples of free radicals will include reactive oxygen species or ROS, which are responsible for cell injury, and ROS or reactive oxygen species can cause cell injury during chemical exposure, radiation exposure, ischemia reperfusion injury, and during cellular aging. Now I also have two separate videos on reperfusion injury and cellular aging, so you can also look into those videos after watching this video for more information. However, you also have to remember that free radicals do have some beneficial roles as well. For example, in the phagocytes during microbial killing, there is a role of free radicals, as we will see. So now that we have defined free radicals and mentioned some facts about them, now we will move on and talk about the examples of free radicals. Now I have already mentioned the most common example, and that was reactive oxygen species. Now, among the reactive oxygen species, we will have superoxide anion, hydrogen peroxide, and hydroxyl radical. Other examples of free radicals will include nitric oxide, peroxynitride anion, nitrogen dioxide, etc. So now you may be asking, Dr. Rabiul, how are these free radicals generated? And always remember, free radicals are generated in a variety of mechanisms. They can be generated during the reduction-oxidation reactions that occur during normal metabolic process. They can also be generated during absorption of radiant energy and during inflammation, and also during enzymatic metabolism of certain exogenous chemical and drugs. And as we will see, some transition metals, for example iron and copper, are also responsible for generation of free radicals. So let's talk about these different mechanisms one by one. So the first mechanism was during reduction-oxidation reactions that occur during normal metabolic process. Now, you may be asking, Dr. Rabiul, what is oxidation and what is reduction? So, to say in short, always remember, oxidation means loss of electron and reduction is the opposite, that is the gain of electron. So, during normal metabolic process, cells of our body generates ATP, and ATP are generated by oxidative process, and during those oxidative process, oxygen combines with hydrogen atom and also produces water. Now, during this reaction, 4 electrons are donated in 4 steps. That is, 1 electron is donated at each step, and we will have 4 electrons donated in 4 steps. And during these different steps, we will see that there will be production of partially reduced intermediates, and those things will become free radicals. And we will give them different names depending upon the number of electrons that has been transferred. For example, superoxide will be formed by transfer of 1 electron. Hydrogen peroxide will be produced by transfer of 2 electrons, and hydroxyl radical will be produced by transfer of 3 electrons respectively. So here I am showing you a diagrammatic image depicting those 4 steps during which 4 electrons will be transferred to produce water or H2O from oxygen. So on the far left you can see the oxygen molecule. From oxygen, first we will have generation of superoxide, and this thing can happen by auto-oxidation. Now, auto-oxidation will be seen in the electron transport reaction that occurs inside the mitochondria, and also you can see that a superoxide can also be produced by enzymatic reactions that will include certain enzymes like xanthine oxidase and cytochrome P450 that are located in the mitochondria and also in the cytosol. On the next step you can see that superoxide will be catabolized, and that will then produce hydrogen peroxide by transfer of 2 electrons. And we can also see that a special enzyme will be involved in this second step, and that is superoxide dismutase. Now, in your textbook you will also see that a superoxide dismutase enzyme that will include both manganese superoxide dismutase and copper zinc superoxide dismutase, and these 2 enzymes will have different location. For example, manganese superoxide dismutase is located inside the mitochondria, whereas copper zinc superoxide dismutase will be found inside the cytosol. So that's an important thing to know. Moving on to the third step, here we can see that hydroxyl radicals will be produced from hydrogen peroxide. So always remember, hydroxyl radicals can be produced in two ways. The first mechanism is from hydrogen peroxide, and that involves a reaction known as Fenton reaction. And we will talk about Fenton reaction in details after a while. But also notice that hydroxyl radicals can be also produced from water too, and that will happen during radiolysis. So also keep that thing in your mind, that hydroxyl free radicals can be produced in two ways. They can be produced from hydrogen peroxide during the transfer of the 3 electron, and also hydroxyl radicals can be produced from water during radiolysis. And finally, on the fourth step, you can see that there is production of water from hydroxyl radical. The next mechanism of free radical generation is during absorption of radiant energy. For example, absorption of ultraviolet light and X-rays. Now, we have already given one example. We have seen that ionizing radiation can hydrolyze water into hydroxyl ion and hydrogen free radicals, and we have already mentioned that in the previous diagram by denoting it as radiolysis. The next mechanism of free radical generation occurs during inflammation. Always remember, during inflammation, leukocytes become activated and they carry out some precise reaction in their plasma membrane multiprotein complex, and those reactions involve the use of NADPH oxidase enzyme as well. And also intracellular oxidases, for example xanthine oxidases, generate superoxide anion as well. Metabolism of exogenous chemicals or drugs can also generate free radicals. For example, we can get free radicals from enzymatic metabolism of carbon tetrachloride. The next mechanism of free radical generation will include transition metals, for example iron and copper, and these transition metals either donate or accept free electrons during various intracellular reactions and catalyze the formation of free radicals. So now we will talk about Fenton reaction. Recall we had mentioned the name Fenton reaction when we were talking about generation of hydroxyl free radicals previously. So that thing happens by Fenton reaction, and as you can see, this is Fenton reaction where hydrogen peroxide is reacting with ferrous form of the iron and producing ferric form of iron and hydroxyl free radical. Now also remember, this Fenton reaction is enhanced with the presence of superoxide. The last mechanism of free radical generation will involve generation of free radicals from endothelial cell, macrophages, neurons and other cell types, and they will mainly generate nitric oxide. And sometimes it can act as a free radical, and it can also be converted to an even more reactive free radical that is known as peroxynitride anion. So now that we have talked about the generation of free radicals, now we will move on and talk about the removal of free radicals from our body. Now always remember, since free radicals are unstable, they can decay spontaneously. At the same time, our body has developed a lot of enzymatic as well as non-enzymatic mechanisms to remove free radicals. and they will involve the following mechanism. The first way to remove free radicals will include antioxidants. Vitamin A, vitamin E, and ascorbic acid or vitamin C are important vitamins that have antioxidant property. And you can remember that by remembering ACE, ACE. These are antioxidants. And also remember glutathione that is found in the cytosol. That can also act as antioxidant, and they can either block the free radical formation or make the free radicals inactivate. That is, they can also act as scavengers of free radicals. The next mechanism to minimize free radical formation is by binding the transition metals like iron and copper with certain transport proteins or storage proteins so that they become inactive. Recall that transition metals like iron and copper were responsible for production of free radicals. So whenever those transition metals are bound with certain transport protein or storage protein, for example transferrin, ferritin, ceruloplasmin, etc., they will become inactive, and that will result in less free radical formation. The next mechanism of free radical removal includes free radical scavenging system, and that is mainly made up of a series of enzymes. They will include catalase, superoxide dismutase, glutathione peroxidase, etc. So what is the function of catalase? They are found in peroxisome, and they break down hydrogen peroxide into oxygen and water as seen in this reaction. We have already talked about the role of superoxide dismutase, and we have also mentioned their types, and they included manganese superoxide dismutase and copper zinc superoxide dismutase, and they were found in different locations. Recall that manganese superoxide dismutase was located in mitochondria, while copper zinc superoxide dismutase was located in cytosol. And what was their function? They used to convert superoxide into hydrogen peroxide. Glutathione peroxidase also catalyzes free radical breakdown, and it does that by the following reactions. So these are the reactions of glutathione peroxidase, and you can see that we have reduced glutathione as well as oxidized glutathione seen in these reactions, and their ratio, the ratio of oxidized glutathione to reduced glutathione, is, as a matter of fact, a reflection of oxidative state of the cell. So the examiners are very fond of asking this type of question, that what reflects the state, the oxidative state of a cell, and then the answer will be the ratio of oxidized glutathione to reduced glutathione. So also keep that thing in your mind. So now that we have talked about how free radicals are produced and how they are removed from our body, now we will talk about a very high-yield topic, and that is, what are the effects of free radicals in our body, or how free radicals cause cell injury in our body. Now always remember, the effects of free radical in our body is very widespread. However, we can see that they can cause cell injury by mainly three types of reaction, and this is very high yield information. The examiners are very fond of asking this question: how does free radicals cause cell injury? So first you have to remember that they can cause cell injury by three reactions. They are lipid peroxidation in the membranes. The second way is by oxidative modification of proteins, and the third mechanism is by DNA damage. So let's talk about these three reactions or mechanisms one by one. So the first mechanism was lipid peroxidation in the membrane. Now always remember, cell membrane as well as the membranes of different organelles inside of our cells contain lipid, and inside the lipid we have fatty acid. Now what happens here is the free radicals target the double bonds of the unsaturated fatty acid, and particularly the hydroxyl radical are mainly involved in lipid peroxidation, and they will attack the double bond in the unsaturated fatty acid. And what will be the end result of that? The interaction of the lipid and the free radical will produce peroxides, and these things will be unstable, they will be reactive, and sometimes they will also result in autocatalytic reaction that we had talked about in the first part of this video. And that means more and more free radicals will be produced, and that will propagate the damage further, and that will all result in serious membrane damage. The next mechanism by which free radicals can cause cell injury will include oxidative modification of proteins. Now, free radicals can enhance oxidation of amino acid side chains of the protein, and that will result in formation of covalent bond, for example disulfide bond between proteins, and that will result in formation of protein-protein cross-link. At the same time, free radicals will also promote oxidation of protein backbone. Now what will be the outcome of all these oxidative modifications of protein? Recall that enzymes are also protein, so oxidative modification of protein can disrupt the active sites of enzyme, and that will result in reduced or lost functionality of those enzymes. Similarly, some proteins are structural protein, and oxidative modification of those proteins can disrupt the conformation of those proteins. At the same time, you also have to remember that oxidative modification can also enhance proteasomal degradation of misfolded or unfolded proteins. The last mechanism by which free radicals can cause cell injury is by DNA damage. Always remember, free radicals can cause breakdown of the DNA. It can cause single as well as double strand breaks in the DNA, and it can also cross-link DNA strands, and that will result in formation of adducts. And all these DNA damage caused by free radicals can result in cellular aging as well as malignant transformation of the cells. Now I have separate videos on cellular aging and also videos on neoplasm, so you can also look into those videos after watching this video for more information. So this concludes today's discussion about free radical injury. I hope this video was helpful. If you like my videos, do comment, share, subscribe, and let me know. And for my students, I will recommend you to go through your textbooks to know more information. Okay, so that's all for today. Until next time, take care and stay blessed. Thank you.